Ladies and gentlemen, the Twitter ban of President Trump was the worst thing to happen to the company. Jennifer Rubin today, Washington Post. So she has an article, 50 things that are already better. Oh my goodness, you could tell the Washington Post is so happy about the Biden administration. Number one of the 50 things, you can ignore Twitter. So the White House briefing room is not an Orwellian nightmare of lies, yeah, right? As opposed to the truth that Biden has told pertaining to everything from his accusers to meetings that he had that he knew about with his son that helped enrich his son and his brother and his family. How do you think he went from $300,000 in financial net worth to over $10-12 million from what? Speaking engagements like the Clintons? Have you heard him speak? But here, you can ignore Twitter. President Biden has not completed his first week in office, but already there is much to celebrate. Let's count the ways. Number one, you can ignore Twitter. This is January 25th, 2021. This is not just me talking. Everyone knows that the one thing that kept Twitter afloat in terms of its place within American politics was President Donald Trump. Now, that's not even... Twitter stock has been tanking. There was a little rebound recently, but it's been tanking. It actually just settled a lawsuit, a really interesting lawsuit, where Twitter promises reform in proposed settlement. So Twitter Inc. on Monday announced... Twitter Inc. on Monday announced a proposed settlement of 3 shareholder lawsuits that accused executives of falsely reporting user growth and engagement metrics, in some cases projecting growth that failed to materialize. So they didn't pay anything, but they promised to, under the proposal deal, the San Francisco company's board, this is a Market Watch article, board of directors would not pay a financial penalty, but would be required to adopt greater oversight over corporate strategy and risk, and enhance controls and disclosures. This is all doublespeak. This is all corporate, doublespeak. Oh, we're going to enhance controls and disclosures. Well, meanwhile, they've been accused of falsely reporting user growth and engagement metrics, which is exactly why they have a publicly traded stock, or a company that gets investors. And a company that's barely afloat now because, when you look at $3.4 billion in debt, they have a great deal of debt, and they've been losing money 2 of the past 3 quarters. So the first time they were profitable was in 2018. The second time was in 2019. 2020, they might make a small profit, but they had tremendous losses the first and second quarter of last year. So Trump will single-handedly end that company eventually. It is, and it's interesting too because these companies are so powerful. It's interesting. Forbes had an article. Twitter is the worst company on planet Earth. So hit subscribe to this channel because I told you 2 years ago, delete your Twitter account. I have this buffoon who impersonates me on Twitter, breaking the law all the time. Amazon knows who this person is because this person illegally shared my books on Amazon. So Amazon has the person's profile. And anyway, so I do not have a Twitter account. Okay? And of course, Twitter just allows this person to continually break the law. But I don't have a Twitter account. I told you 2 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Get this segment going because I'm not right about everything, but I have a pulse of what's going on, and I've given very accurate analysis on so many things. I told you 2 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, delete your Twitter account, delete your Facebook account. You don't need to be in a cyber world, this cyber reality. Reality, hopefully, is an enjoyable, wonderful place. You don't need to jump into this alternate internet world. It's like Tron. It's really like Tron for disgruntled, angry, apoplectic people. Oftentimes liberal Democrats. But here, Twitter is the worst company on planet Earth. Here's how to bet against the stock and deactivate your account. That was a Forbes article a couple weeks back. Forbes actually removed that. The page no longer exists. So they removed that article. But it's like Forbes published the article. They've removed it. Just today, the Washington Post, the number one thing you can ignore Twitter. So the cat's out of the bag. The Pandora's box has already been unleashed by President Trump. The reason that Twitter was losing money for a long, long time, up until 2018. So Trump won in 2016. They finally made money in 2018. 2019, they made money. 2020 has been a down year. And they say, well, the advertising budgets. Yeah, but if it was a good platform, advertisers would choose it as a platform. So, but I want to read you this. So not only do you have a settlement today where they kind of acknowledge, they don't acknowledge wrongdoing, but they're definitely going to make changes to address the certain allegations. But this is interesting. this is another issue. Twitter faces a $250 million FTC fine for misusing emails and phone numbers. So there you go. Twitter said the identifiers were inadvertently used for advertising, August 3rd, 2020. Twitter said that the Federal Trade Commission may soon fine it up to $250 million for improper use of users' phone numbers and email addresses. The potential fines would come for violations of Twitter's 2011 agreement with the FTC to no longer mislead consumers about how to protect their personal information. So about 15 to 20% of the revenues come from selling data, just like Facebook does, or allowing others to utilize data that it acquires. Between 2013 and 2019, Twitter used phone numbers and email addresses provided, quote, for safety and security purposes to help target ads. Twitter disclosed the practice back in October, saying it was done inadvertently and called it an error. The FTC evidently believes that Twitter misled consumers by not disclosing that their data may have been used in this way. Twitter says that the commission sent a draft complaint on July 28 describing alleged violations of the 2011 agreement. Twitter estimates that it could be fined anywhere from $150 million to $250 million. So they have the cash to take care of it. That's not going to be a problem. But they also have $3.4 billion in debt. And they're not growing as fast as people think they are. And people are now deleting their account. Even the Washington Post, the number one thing the Washington Post says today is that you don't have to be on Twitter. So they're not going to go bankrupt tomorrow, or probably not next year, but it'll be in a couple of years, or at least 4 to 5 years. They're not going to be around. They'll become the MySpace of political media. It's not going to be this digital commons where, people think they have to have an account. I haven't been on Twitter for 2 years. My channel is approaching 200,000 subs now. I haven't been on Facebook for 2 years. It had no impact on my writing, my channels, nothing. Once we get past 200,000, I'll start doing more work on my other channel, and I have some really fantastic news. I'm working on something that you're going to love. But ladies and gentlemen, this is really interesting. This is an article. Where is that article? There's a great article talking about the company. Let's see, where can I find this article? Here it is. It's Twitter shares are just plain overvalued. Here's where Jack Dorsey's ship will start to sink. The fact that Trump is no longer there, they've not only alienated 74 million Americans, but a great many millions of other people around the world. Look, this is an article, January 15, 2021. Here's where Jack Dorsey's ship will start to sink. First, Twitter, we start and finish with one metric given by management, the MDAUs, or monetizable daily active users. Twitter changed to this metric in February of 2019, and in and of itself, it's meaningless, but is a good base for modeling. Twitter's recent quarterly report showed 187 million MDAUs, with 36 million users in the U.S., and 156 million abroad. Now, I don't know how popular Twitter is outside of the U.S. I don't think it's as popular outside of the U.S. as it is within the United States of America. But here, I'm assuming the difference is due to rounding. That's where Jack Dorsey's ship will start to sink. Twitter and every social media company receives a strong valuation based on user base numbers that are full of people who don't actually use the device, but do have an account. But with this latest movement, of which I am glad to be a part, folks are deactivating their Twitter account, not just ignoring them. So you have not only people ignoring the account, so Jennifer Rubin today said, I mean, it's her words. She actually wrote this, and it's so hilarious. You can ignore Twitter. What have I been saying? This is the Washington Post. They love Twitter. They love social media. Social media is geared for them. Oh my God, they love it. And the first thing, she has an article, 50 things that are already better. And I mean, it comes from we're not paying for golf trips. Yeah, well, we're paying for meetings and the brokering of deals. A whole lot of things we're paying for. We can get into them another time. The New York Post, for example, getting back to that story, the New York Post, Twitter banned the New York Post, suspended its Twitter account. This was long before they banned President Trump. Why? Because of a false news story that said, Caligula, Biden's son's emails were hacked. They weren't hacked. They weren't Russian disinformation. So, I mean, it's like, you're going to look back at this time period. We are now tough on Russian human rights abuses. What? There were human rights abuses just a couple of tremendous ones, just a couple of years before President Obama started his reset in 2008. Then you had 20% of U.S. uranium capacity, which is a fact even Snopes talks about, that was allowed to get into the hands of Vladimir Putin. Because only President Obama, this is Snopes, the Bible of Democrats, only President Obama could have vetoed the deal. New York Times talks about it also in a great article. One of its few really wonderful investigative articles on based on investigative journalism. But it was probably the last time the New York Times ever published an article really detrimental to Democrats. But here, the White House philosophy, we can go on. These are hilarious. 50 things that are already better. Number one, you can ignore Twitter, which is what I've been saying. But here, if you look back at what I was just reading right now, which of course I lost track of here. Okay, so that's where Jack Dorsey's ship will start to sink. Twitter and every social media company receives a strong valuation based on numbers that are full of people who don't actually use the service but do have an account. But with the latest movement, of which I am glad to be a part, folks are deactivating their Twitter account, not just ignoring them. Those user numbers are going to plummet. I would expect this to happen when the first quarter numbers are reported in April, not as much when full year results are reported February 9th. How low can they go? Well, Twitter's MDAU base is small to begin with, so that the initial drop off will be quite noticeable. On a real user basis, I would expect Twitter usage to fall by about 50% here in the U.S. So this is an article by Jim Collins on thestreet.com, January 15, 2021. Goes on to say, so here's your math. Last Friday, Twitter closed at 51. This Thursday, it closed at 45. My fair value implies that it should be worth 16. Then when you factor in the reality that's not growing, that it has $3.4 billion in debt, that it might have to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in fines, that it's already been accused in a court of law numerous times of inflating its user base, and the Washington Post just today said you can ignore Twitter. It doesn't look good. I mean, this social media, okay, you have a platform that has been utilized for one purpose and one purpose only, to undermine President Trump. Now, President Trump made missteps. He shouldn't have utilized Twitter when he was president. He actually utilized Twitter in a way that they were able to outmaneuver him politically. At first, that kind of bulldozer sledgehammer approach, going after people on Twitter, that was good. But you have to tone it down at a certain point, even if the sharks and even if they're all after you and the sharks are aiming to bite you, and they're circling the boat, and even if you know that the people that are going after you will continue to go after you, even if you act in a diplomatic manner, on Twitter he should have kind of toned it down, at least in the last couple of years. He gave them, it wasn't Trump giving them this, but every time he riled them up and took like a baseball bat and just bashed this hornet's nest called Twitter, this cyber reality, and got everyone in a frenzy. It created this political reality that doesn't really exist, but unfortunately the perception is that, oh my God, Trump is the most divisive president. The division came from people who devoted their lives to undermining him on Twitter. That's where when they say Trump is divisive, what they truly mean is there are people who never accepted President Trump and who will never accept President Trump. And Twitter was this world that they could derive political influence and fame and a lot of money also from just disparaging and demeaning President Trump. So it was just this, they do this also to the far left also. You see what's taking place. Twitter's deactivating far left accounts also. The censorship doesn't stop. And Twitter is at the forefront of all of that. So that's why when I deactivated my Twitter account 2 years ago and deactivated my Facebook account, I said, okay, I'm not giving these people power over me. Or I'm not giving I'm not entering a world that doesn't exist, because that world can't help me in any way, shape, or form. It's just, you're always going to get into an argument or dispute or a testy exchange back and forth with somebody. And there's no point to that. Like if you're at the grocery store, it's not like you're looking at somebody that you don't know and saying, well, I don't like what you said a year ago. How dare you? You just go about your day. You're generally in society, just living life, not judging or condemning people. And people don't judge or condemn you. That's what real life is about, trying to be productive, trying to learn and grow as an individual. Living your life, taking care of yourself, your family, doing things you enjoy, being a positive and productive person, human being. Why enter this internet world, this cyber reality that doesn't exist? And so now even Jennifer Rubin is talking about that, echoing exactly what I've been saying. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. Trump has sent them into a tailspin, and it's so interesting to see. Give me your thoughts. Thank you.